I want to share with you guys how to set up a walk cycle animation like this in Clo3D, Blender, Daz, Mixamo. These are the programs we're going to use to get to this point. And this is walking, infinite looped. This keeps repeating itself. This is a nice way to set up your walk cycles. So let's get started. So we're going to start in Daz Studio. This is the avatar that I want to work with for the animation. And we're quickly going to just export this to Blender. So we're going to go to File, Export. I'm putting this in my avatars folder. I've got a series of folders here for each program I'm working with. This is my avatars. I'm just going to call this T-pose 1. And I'm setting the scale here. So if it's set to Daz Studio by default, leave all the other settings as they are and just turn the scaling to 1%. So this will work better for Blender when we import everything next. So just click accept and this will export now. So when it's exported, we can go into a new Blender scene. I'm going to go to File, Import, Object. I'm going to go to my avatar folder where I just exported this and import this OBJ file. Click Import. And now our avatar is imported. You see this cube is 2 meters by 2 meters. So I know that this avatar is correctly scaled. If I choose the avatar, I can see its height is 1.87 meters, which is correct scaling. Just make sure you're working with the right scale and that this isn't coming in too big or too small when you export it from Daz. Here you see that everything is kind of exported as separate pieces. So I'm just going to select all these components from the avatar, press M on the keyboard and make a new collection and just call this. So now all of those things are just inside this one collection that I can turn on and off. What I would then do is apply the textures, because if I look at this, I have no texturing applied. Yeah, there's nothing here. I've done this in another video, so if I show you guys here, this guy is fully textured and set up from Daz. So I'll put a link in the description about the process I go through for this one. I've already made a separate video. But now we've got our avatar into Blender. So the next step here is to get this guy into Mixamo so that we can start the animation process. So I just want to select just my avatar. So I'm only selecting this guy and not the hair and the eyelashes and the shoes and everything. Select this guy and go to File and Export and just export simply an OBJ. And I'm going to put this in, I have a Blender folder, so again, Blender folder here. I'm going to go to Export and I'm just going to limit to selected only. So this will export only the selected object in my scene. The rest of the settings I can leave as they are, and I'm just going to call this T-pose no shoes, because he doesn't have any shoes attached to it. We're going to export this object, and then we're going to jump over to Mixamo. Make an account for Mixamo. You need to make an account and sign in, and then we can go from there. So here I am all signed into Mixamo. I've already uploaded my character, but I'll show you how we do this again. So select a character file. I'm going to go to my Blender folder for my exports and just choose this T-posed avatar. Click open, and then this is just going to upload and start some processing. So when this is processed, your character is going to load in the screen like this for the auto rigger. You want to check the orientation that he's facing the right way. If he's not, you can flip the character around using these controls here. Click next, and then we want to place these markers. Take the chin one and put it right on the chin in the middle. Take the wrist, put it right on the wrist, like this. Same for the elbow, knee, and groin. And then just click next, and then this might take a few minutes to auto rig, and then we can start looking at the animations in Mixamo. So when the rigging is finished, it might take a few minutes. This is what it's going to look like. You can check if everything's looking okay with your character right now, like he's moving, nothing seems stretched or weird, so this looks like we positioned everything correctly. Then click next. And then this is going to delete my old character and import the new one, and that's fine. And now my avatar is visible in the Mixamo workspace. In the top, I'm just going to search for walk and look at my options for walking. The one I'm going to work with is actually this one. I'm going to set it to in place, and I'm going to use this as the walk cycle for the rest of this video. So this is set to 30 frames. It's looping, it's repeating itself. You can change the speed with override, and you can change the arm space. We can also change this in Blender, but now is also possible inside Mixamo. So if you want the arms further away from the body, you can change that here. For now, I think I can put that back down to 50. There's enough space between the arms and under the arms here, so we don't have much issues for collisions. So I've got this set to in place so that he's not walking forward through 3D space, he's just staying in the same spot and walking over and over again. So this is ready to download, so hit the download button. You can leave all these settings as they are, so FBX format with skin, 30 frames per second, and set keyframe reduction to none, and click download. And then this will download your FBX, and we can import this into Blender. Let's look back in Blender. This is the scene we've got here with our textured avatar in it. So into this scene we can import our original avatar, our animated one. So import FBX. I'm going to go to my avatar folder again. This is my download. It's called Walk 1. Under animation, we want to check some things here before we import things. So offset animation, set this to 0. We don't want to offset the start of this animation at all. Check that you've got use pre-post rotations selected, or you might get strange results. And under armature, just unselect all of these 3 boxes so that your settings match this. And if you do this correctly, we can import the FBX, and it will be visible in our scene. It is here. I can see it says armature here, which is my character, Genesis 8 male here. It's been imported, but I can't see it, and that's because the scaling is slightly off. So if I hit view selected, you see this is the size of my shoe, and this is the size of my avatar right now. There's a scaling issue. So if you choose this armature, we can look at where the issue is. So if I look at the character, the scale of the character is 1:1. That's correct. If I look at the scale of the armature, it's set to 0.01. So if I just change this to 1 for all these 3 values and zoom back out, my animated avatar is now the correct scale. So if I press play, I can watch this animation run through. And then it's stopping because we're running this timeline from 1 to 250 frames. So if I change this to 30 frames and go back to the beginning and run this from 1 to 30, this animation should loop around and we don't see any glitching from start to finish. The issue now we will come to see is that this character and this character don't have the same materials. So if we look at the materials, one is textured beautifully and one is just no texture whatsoever. So if we look at the differences here in Blender, I choose my original character here. I'm just going to rename this textured so that I can really see which ones I'm clicking on. And then under here, I'm just going to rename this animated. If you want to see everything in a different color, by the way, just go into this viewport shading option here. So like in solid mode, drop this arrow down and choose random. If you've got this set to texture or material, you will just have these white, depending on how the materials are set up. But if you just select random, it'll give every object in your scene a random color, so it's easier to kind of identify them visually. What we want to do now is transfer this animation from this armature back over to this avatar. So we want all of this to be connected to this armature, and then essentially we can get rid of this original animation. The way we're going to do that is through the bone weights. So we need to transfer all the parenting to this armature, and that's how we're going to do it. You'll see the difference here. If I select the thing that came out of Mixamo and look at the materials, I have no materials at all applied to this. I also have vertex groups. So for this one, I have a whole series of vertex groups that are associated to my skeleton, to my armature. Whereas for this one, I have no vertex groups, but I have all the materials. So we want one avatar with all the materials and all the vertex groups. So to do this, select your armature. I'm just going to zoom out a bit. Select the armature, go down to this properties here. This is called object data properties, and it looks like a little stickman. Set this skeleton to rest position, and it will move our avatar into the original position that it was when it was exported or imported into Mixamo. And for the viewport display, scroll down, and under viewport display, I'm going to change display as octahedral to stick. So my bones now look like sticks instead of these large geometries. And then I'm going to set this to in front. So now I can see my skeleton in front of everything. And if I want to turn this off, if it's in the way when I'm looking at things, I can just turn this eye off right here for my armature. So what we want to do now is transfer the weights from this animated avatar to this textured avatar. And that's easy enough to do. We're just going to select this one in our outliner on the side here, the animated avatar, with the correct vertex groups here. And then we're going to press Control and select our textured avatar. And now we've got both of these two things selected. Go from object mode into weight paint mode. And if you selected everything in the correct order, your avatar will go blue and you'll have no vertex groups visible on the side. And to transfer this from one mesh to another, we just go to weights, transfer weights, and under this little transfer mesh data option here, we want to set source layer select to by name. And if you see now, when this is set to by name, all those weights have appeared on our textured avatar. They are now here. So we just need to parent this textured avatar to our original armature, and we should be good. So I'm going to turn off the visibility of this avatar underneath. So I'm just dealing with my original textured one now. And you'll see that this is not currently connected to my skeleton. To do this is quite simple. Select the thing that you want to connect to the skeleton and then press Shift and select the skeleton. Press Ctrl and P on the keyboard to set up parenting, or you can right click the skeleton and go to parent. Choose armature deform. And now that we have the textured avatar parented to this armature, it's now visible under this hierarchy here. So anything parented to this armature is visible here. So we can see both of those avatars are now parented to this armature. So if I click this and I press G and I move my skeleton, my avatar is now connected to this. Same thing goes if I change this armature from rest pose into pose position, my avatar is now going to follow the same animation that we had before. Obviously my eyebrow, underwear, shoes, and everything else is not connected, and I can show you how to connect these things now. Just a note that the more things we connect to this armature, the slower it's going to run. So like now, if I put this in post position and I just look at my original one, this plays back now at about 13 frames per second on this computer with this scene as it is now. The more things I parent to this, the heavier this is going to be and the slower it's going to run. But we do need this to be set up correctly in the end. So for now, I'm going to turn off the visibility of my original avatar and just look at the things from my original Daz export. So choose your armature, go back to rest position so that we're in the rest pose, the T pose that we started off with. And now we want to transfer all of these other objects to our armature in the same way. So to do this, we say we want to transfer these weights, so these vertex groups, onto this underwear, for example. So take this avatar and then Shift and select the underwear. And again, go to weight paint mode, weights, transfer weights, and this is already set to by name, so all of our weights are just transferred. And then I'm going to go to object mode, and I can parent this to my armature. So select the thing you want to parent, Shift, select the armature, right click, parent, armature deform. And now if I move this armature just to check, my underwear is also attached. So I would repeat this process for everything else that I want to attach to this armature at this point. But like I said, the more I attach, the slower this is going to go. So for now, the FPS of this is kind of okay. Let's look at adding the hair, for example. I'm going to zoom in here, select the hair, no, I'll select the avatar first, shift, select the hair, go to weight paint mode, go to weights, transfer weights. Again, this is set to by name, so this is correct, and our weights are transferred. If I now go back to object mode, and I look at the animation this time, no, we need to parent it, so let's take the hair, shift, select the armature, right click, parent, armature deform. So this is now, again, parented to my armature. I can see this short afro hair cap is connected to this. If I go back to pose position and press play now, with the hair attached, my FPS is really dropping. 7, even less, I think now. Like, this is running really slow. So just be aware of this when you're working in your viewport. The same process goes for adding anything else to this armature. So if we want to bring something into the scene and attach it to this, whether it's accessories, whether it's shoes, whether it's anything else, we would do that in the same way. So if I go back to rest position, select the armature, go back to the rest position, and for now we have these shoes that came from Daz, so these are correctly aligned around our avatar. But if you want to work with a pair of shoes that is from, a different project, we can do that as well. So I'm just going to turn off the visibility of these shoes. And then I'm going to go to File, Import, OBJ, and go to my Assets folder. And in here I've got some boots. And I'm going to import the boots. And here we go. So this boot is imported right in the middle of my scene, and it's scaling wise, it looks a bit big, and I need 2 of them. So let's select this boot, and I'm just going to press G to grab it. And what to notice about this is the origin point is right in the center of this boot. And what I mean by that is this little orange dot. If I select this avatar here, the orange dot for this is right in the origin point of this world, right at this intersection here. The same for the underwear, the origin point is there. The same for everything else. The origin point is right in the center of this point here. If I choose the boot, it's in the center of the boot, which is actually good for now because it means that we can rotate this around that point. Yeah. It looks like the shoelaces are disconnected. So let's just join these together. And yeah, now we have one boot. So I'm going to press G and X to move this across the X-axis. I'm going to press R and Z to rotate this around the Z-axis until I can kind of line it up with the foot. And then let's look at this from the side. I'm going to press G and Y to move this forward and back and just move this forward a bit around the ankle. And it looks too high up. So I'm going to press G and Z to just move this down so that the foot isn't coming through the tread of the shoe. This looks kind of okay, but I think it's long, so I'm going to press S and Y to scale the Y-axis and just shrink the shoe down a little bit. Press G and Y to move it back. And now this boot is in a kind of good position, I think. G, X, like there. There's still a little bit of feet and toes sticking out, and we can very easily fix this. Maybe we just undo the scaling. Too far back. Join these. Just get this into position. So I think this looks good. And now we want to attach this to our armature, but we also want to have 2 of them. The way to do this, I'm just going to change the y-axis a bit. Okay, this looks good. If you have bits of foot or toe or anything sticking out through your shoe, this is really easy to fix. We could either choose the shoe, go to sculpt mode, grab something and move it around. I would always say add a vertex group, add a shape key when you're starting to sculpt something. So select the shoe, add a shape key that's a basis, and then click again to add a key. And just use this grab tool, which is the first or the second yellow one, and just grab the boot. Set the shape key to 1 to turn it on, and then just grab the boot around. So you can kind of move it where it needs to go and fit things in like this. You could do the same thing with the avatar. You could move points on the avatar, or we could select the avatar. We could add a new vertex group into this. So click here to add and call this foot hide. And then I'm just going to go into edit mode and turn on X-ray mode. So toggle X-ray in the back. Go into face select, so press 3 on the keyboard or select this icon here and just select the feet that you want to get rid of. Select all those vertices here and just click assign in your vertex group on the side. Go back into object mode, turn off X-ray, toggle this off again, and let's bring the shoe back. And if there is intersection, we can now use this vertex group to hide the feet. So what I mean by that is add a modifier, choose the avatar, click add modifier, go to mask, and in this find the one called hide, foot hide, and it will hide everything but the feet, but you can invert this selection. So toggle this here, and now our feet are going to be hidden. So you can see that this mesh is kind of now deleted, but if I want to bring it back, I can. It's not gone, it's just masked out, so that will kind of get rid of any little intersections with the feet and the shoes that you might have. So back to the boots. Choose the boot, add a modifier, and we're going to add mirror. And you'll see now this is mirrored around this origin point right here. So if I choose the boot, go to object, set origin, and choose origin to 3D cursor. This is our 3D cursor right in the center here. Object, set origin, 3D cursor. Our shoe is now mirrored, but it's also got the rotation applied to it. So because we've rotated this shoe to place it, this has also got that same rotation. So I'm just going to apply all of these transforms and it should correct the mirror modifier. So select the shoe, object, apply all transforms, and now our shoes are correctly aligned with both of our feet. At this point, you want to apply this mirror modifier so that we have two separate shoes to work with. Choose apply. Modifier cannot be applied to a mesh with shape keys. Okay, so if you've made a shape key and sculpted this, choose the shoe, go back to your vertex groups, and just over here, click apply all shape keys. These shape keys are gone now. We can't edit this back and forth again, but not an issue. We've got it to fit. Apply the mirror modifier, and then we can transfer everything as we did before. So choose the avatar, shift and select the shoes. Go to, I'm actually going to turn off this mask just while we do this, so the feet are visible when we transfer these weights. Okay, so choose the avatar, shift and select the shoes, weight paint, weights, transfer weights, and everything's set to by name, and our weights look like they've transferred. Go back to object mode, select the shoes, shift select the avatar, the armature, control and P, and then parent armature deform. So now these should be parented to our skeleton. If I choose the skeleton and then go back into the little stick man here, the object data properties, and go back to pose, my boots are now moving and posing with the rest of my avatar. You see here the issue I'm referring to with the feet poking through. So if you select the avatar, go back to your modifiers and turn this mask on. That's just a really quick way to get rid of those intersections, right? So now we understand how to attach everything to our avatar. I would need to repeat this process for my eyebrows and eyelashes, but at this point it's not important. the next thing we would want to do is get this ready to bring into Clo3D to start to simulate our garment. So in order to do that, we need to work with an Alembic export of our whole animation. Before we get to that point, we kind of want to fix any issues with this avatar, because this is going to be used as the collider inside Clo. So when I say issues, I mean like the extension of this wrist looks a bit weird. If you have intersections between arms, or we want to move the arm positions again, we can change all of that now. So to do this, we're going to select the armature. Scroll, give yourself some space in the bottom here to open up the graph editor and keep this timeline open. Right click here and set a horizontal split in this bottom space and open up the graph editor. And what we want to fix first is this wrist. So if I go to pose mode and choose just this hand bone here, in the graph editor now I have my armature selected and I have this left hand bone. So this is called left hand, this is my left hand. I could press R and like rotate this around in space here. This is running really slow, so I'm just going to, for now, delete the hair, I think. Right. Yeah, this is running a lot smoother now. Like I said, if there's a lot of things attached to your armature, things are going to run quite slow. So I know I want to rotate this more like this than this. To do that, I need to do this in the graph so it affects all the frames of the animation and not just this current frame here. So scroll down and drop this key down right here to look at all the transforms we have and rotations for this hand. Clicking this I turns off the view of any of these graphs. So what we want to look at is, for example, the X rotation. So go here to the X rotation and turn this on. And this has got all the keys selected because I can see all these little graph points are highlighted. If they're not, if it's like this, just press A on the keyboard and it'll select all of them. Press G and just move your mouse up and down and this will rotate this wrist. This is the Z rotation of the wrist. If this moves too aggressively when you move your mouse, press Shift and hold Shift down and this will move everything in a lot smaller increments. But now I can straighten up the hand and jump to another frame where this hand is poking out. Choose this bone, drop this down, turn the visibility of all these graphs off, and just set the visibility of the Q graph back on, of the X graph. Check that all the keys are selected, and then again press G and just move it up just a tiny bit to straighten up this wrist. You could do this for everything in the scene, so if you want to like change the rotation of the feet, if you need to add more arm space, you could select the arm bone. Again, drop these keys down here to look at, and then just turn on the visibility of just maybe the Z rotation. Yeah. And that's front to back. So maybe it's Y, side to side, so I think it's X again. So X will give us more or less space in the arm. So if I want the arms further away from the body in the animation, I can do that. Or closer to the body, I can do that as well. For now, I don't need to move this. I think this is fine. And we can get this ready to work with in Clo. What we want though is a 60 frame loop so that I've got something that I can cut in half and blend back together again when we've simulated our cloth. The best way to do this is to set our frame range from 0 to 60. Select all the bones while you're in pose mode, so press A to select all the bones, they'll get highlighted blue. Select all the keys so that they are highlighted yellow. You can right click and choose copy. Move your timeline to frame 30 and then choose paste. And now that should mean that frame 0, frame 30, and frame 60 are all the exact same position of your avatar. So that when we've simulated this in Clo, we can loop this all back around inside Blender to get kind of a nice infinite loop. For now, we want to get this ready to export, and there's 3 things we need. We need a T-pose, we need a transition pose for the first frame, and then we need an Alembic cache for the animation itself. So quite simply, I'm going to go back to object mode. I'm going to export this frame as frame 0, so I'll set the current frame to 0. Choose the shoes and the avatar because they're the two things I want to deal with inside Clo. Go to File, Export, and I'm going to choose OBJ. The one thing I've just noticed is my guy's not aligned to the floor, so I'm just going to grab this avatar, this armature, press G, and then Z, the Z key to move it on the Z axis, and just move this up until the foot of my boot is aligned with the floor. So this is completely aligned with the ground. And then I'm going to go to Object, Apply, Transforms. So now if I run this, he's going to walk and his feet are touching exactly where the floor is. So this is now correctly aligned. The only things I want to take, like I said, is the avatar and the boots. The rest of this I don't need. So File, Export, OBJ. This is in Blender exports, and I'll call this frame 0 because it's the 0 frame that we want to work with. Limit to selected and click Export. Then choose your armature, go back to your object data properties and go to rest position. Choose again your avatar and your boots only, and then go to File, Export, OBJ, and choose T-pose is fine, I think, to call, and then limit to selected only and go to Export OBJ. Choose your armature again and go back into pose position, and now we want to go to File, Export Alembic. We want to go from frame 0 to 60. We want to do only selected objects, so make sure you've got just your armature, your avatar, and your shoes selected. And the rest of this we can kind of leave as it is. I don't want to take any particle systems if you've got them applied. For now, the rest of this doesn't really matter. I just need the frame range and the scaling is correct. So click Export Alembic. I'm just going to put this again in my Blender exports and call this Animation F0 to 60. So I know this is frame 0 to 60. And I'll call it Walk. And then Export Alembic. And this will just run through those 60 frames and export those frames for you. And the next thing would be to go into Clo. So we will then import this into Clo and work on it with our clothing, which will be the next video in this little mini series. So go over to the next video and we can see how to set everything up in Clo to bring this animation to life.